Welcome to all our viewers in India and around the world. You're watching Defense Dynamics and I am Danveer Singh coming to you from New Delhi. On Defense Dynamics today, we talk about India's new battlefield partner, the Indigenous Unmanned Ground Vehicles or the UGVs for mine warfare and beyond. In Geopolitics, we analyze the most dangerous geopolitical triangle shaping up the Asia's security landscape, which involves China, Japan and Taiwan. But the question is, why is it so? We'll answer that. Going ahead on that, we will ask ourselves a very basic question that defines the future of Asia's security landscape, and that is, what does China really want? And at the end, in my take, I will share my perspective on Asim Munir's elevation as Pakistan's Chief of Defence Forces. What does it mean for whole of this region? But first, the global defence headlines.
India and Indonesia are conducting the 10th edition of their joint Special Forces exercise Garud Shakti at the Special Forces Training School in Bucklow, Himachal Pradesh, aimed at boosting interoperability and sharing best practices for counter-terror operations in semi-mountainous terrain. In a major push for clean energy, the Indian Army has officially integrated biodiesel into its fuel supply chain, with the first consignment received in New Delhi by Lieutenant General Pushpender Singh. The United States has cleared the sale of AGM-158B and B-2 JASSM-ER long-range air-launched missiles to Italy, with the DSCA confirming Rome will receive 100 missiles valued at approximately $301 million. Germany's Bundestag Budget Committee has approved the acquisition of additional G95 assault rifles, intercom systems and Wolf ATVs, as the Defense Ministry moves to replace the G36 with the Heckler & Koch HK416 Alpha 8 as new G95 standard rifle. The United Kingdom's Royal Navy's frigate fleet has reduced to 7 ships following the retirement of HMS Lancaster, a Type 23 frigate commissioned in 1992 and one of the last remaining general-purpose variant.
There is a silent and a non-kinetic critical shift underway in the Indian Army. The rapid induction of indigenous unmanned ground vehicles or the robots built to take on the most dangerous task on the battlefield. From mine detection to ID neutralization, India's own robotic sappers are now stepping into the role traditionally carried out by soldiers under extreme risk. In recent months, the Army has fast-tracked several breakthrough systems, including Sapperscout 2.0, developed by an Indian Army officer, and the Xploder UGV, now cleared for mass procurement. These platforms mark a decisive step towards automated mine clearing, reconnaissance and explosive ordnance disposal.
India is rapidly moving towards a future where soldiers will increasingly operate alongside robots, especially in the most dangerous missions, from mine detection to reconnaissance, from ID disposal to casualty evacuation. The Indian Army is witnessing a surge in indigenous unmanned ground vehicles, marking a major technological leap in battlefield automation and soldier safety. At the heart of this transformation is Sapperscout 2.0, an all-terrain 6-wheeled unmanned ground vehicle conceptualized and developed by Major Raj Prasad RS of the Indian Army, designed to detect mines, carry out reconnaissance, evacuate casualties and scatter mines using a vehicle-based system. The Sapperscout 2.0 brings together modularity, rugged mobility, and advanced sensors such as ground-penetrating radars and thermal imaging, It reflects how Indian soldiers themselves are driving frontline technological innovation.
These platforms mark a major shift in how the army handles minefields and explosive hazards. Instead of sending soldiers into uncertain terrain, the first responder is now a robot. And as autonomy advances, these systems will take on even more roles, from scouting enemy positions and delivering critical supplies under fire.
Another breakthrough in the Army's clearance of Xploder, a combat-focused UGV designed for ID disposal, reconnaissance and payload delivery. The system is engineered to approach, inspect and neutralize explosive threats while keeping the soldiers at a safe distance. Its approval for mass procurement signals not just acceptance but urgency in inducting robots into explosive ordnance disposal, counter-terror and high-risk operations across India's varied conflict zones. India's UGV journey did not start today. The Muntra series, operational since 2017, laid the foundation for tele-operated and autonomous reconnaissance. Meanwhile, newer systems like ECARS, 4x4 and 6x6 are pushing autonomy further with patrol algorithms, obstacle avoidance and AI-based navigation. Together they capture the sector's steady shift from experiments to deployable combat assets.
For the Indian Army, the logic is simple. Every task a robot can perform instead of a soldier enhances survivability and accelerates operations. With Sapperscout 2.0 and Xploder leading this shift, India is building a frontline robotic capability that will only grow stronger in the coming decade.
The new generation of Indian unmanned ground vehicles bring multi-utility capability tailored for the subcontinent's operational challenges. Mine detection and neutralization with ground-penetrating radar, thermal sensors and modular payloads to locate and potentially clear mines. Reconnaissance through real-time visuals from cameras and sensor suits in high-risk zones. Payload versatility in the flexibility to mount weapons, counter UAS modules, logistic loads or engineering tools. All-terrain mobility, these UGVs have independent wheel drive, articulated suspension and tracked options for Himalayan, desert and jungle terrain. Autonomous and tele-operated modes. Robots can work under direct control or follow pre-programmed routes. This is how these features mark a decisive shift from manual to robotic battlefield tasks. This rapid expansion of indigenous UGVs is closely aligned with India's Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat push. Each system inducted reduces import dependence and strengthens domestic robotics, AI and defense manufacturing. More importantly, these platforms drastically reduce risk to soldiers in minefields and ID-laden environments, situations where even the best training cannot eliminate danger. The Sapperscout 2.0 and Xploder leading a fresh wave of innovation, India's battlefield is poised to become increasingly robotic, networked and autonomous. As mine clearing, reconnaissance and explosive ordnance disposal shift to machines, soldiers are freed for faster, safer and more decisive operations. The Indian Army's embrace of unmanned systems signals not just modernization but a fundamental reimagining of land warfare for the next decade.
A strong push for indigenous robotics under Make in India is now delivering tangible battlefield impact. These systems not only reduce risk to soldiers operating in minefields and IED-prone zones, but also mark a major stride in India's journey towards autonomous warfare technologies. The most dangerous geopolitical triangle shaping Asia's security landscape involves China, Japan and Taiwan. Why is it so? Well, these are three actors deeply linked by geography, history and rivalry. And this story is of ever-evolving context that could redefine Indo-Pacific order. So let's break down the shifting power equation.
China today is the most aggressive force in the East China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. Its military rise has been rapid and deliberate. More ships, more missiles, more air power, and increasingly bold maneuvers around Taiwan and Japanese-controlled Senkaku Islands. For Beijing, Taiwan is not just a political objective, it's the key to breaking the first island chain, extending Chinese influence deeper into the Pacific, and pushing the US and Japan further away. China's posture leaves little doubt. Controlling Taiwan would dramatically shift Asia's balance of power, and Beijing believes in history, nationalism, and military momentum are on its side. Just 130 kilometers across the strait, Taiwan remains the most consequential flashpoint in Asia. A thriving democracy and the world's semiconductor hub, Taiwan knows it cannot match China's ship-to-ship or tank-for-tank. Instead, it is restructuring for asymmetric warfare, missiles, drones, sea mines, and mobile defense systems designed to survive and first strike and deny PLA a quick victory. But Taiwan also understands something deeper. Its fate will not be decided alone. It will depend on how fast and how decisively Japan and United States respond.
Taiwan today is more than a security flashpoint. It is a global economic artery and a frontline test of deterrence. If Taiwan falls, the entire Indo-Pacific security architecture from the semiconductors to sea lanes will be shaken.
On the northern edge of this triangle stands Japan, a nation undergoing its most significant military transformation since the Second World War. Tokyo now openly identifies China as its greatest strategic challenge. Japan is doubling defense spending, acquiring long-range strike missiles, dispersing forces across the Ryukyu Islands, and preparing for a scenario where a conflict over Taiwan automatically pulls Japan into battle. Japan knows that if Taiwan falls, its own southern defenses will collapse, and the Chinese naval power will move dangerously close to Okinawa. For Tokyo, defending Taiwan is not charity, it's a matter of national survival. This triangle is reinforced by alliances and deterrence. Japan has the US-Japan Security Treaty. Taiwan has American commitments, though not a formal alliance. China sees these partnerships as encirclement and uses grey zone warfare to wear them down. Coast Guard ships, air incursions, cyber attacks, political influence operations, all aimed at normalizing Chinese pressure without triggering open war. The risk is clear. A blockade of Taiwan would drag Japan into conflict. A clash near the Senkakus would test US treaty obligations, and a single miscalculation could ignite a regional war.
So where does this leave East Asia? In strategic triangle defined by Chinese ambition, Taiwanese resilience and Japanese rearmament. The choices these three actors make and how the United States responds will decide whether the Indo-Pacific remains stable or slips into a confrontation. This is not just a regional rivalry, it's a contest over future balance of power in Asia. In this segment of Defense Dynamics, let's ask ourselves a very basic question that defines the future of Asia's security landscape. And that is, what does China really want? And answer isn't straightforward because there isn't just one China. There are many Chinas operating at the same time. Strategic, nationalistic, economic, insecure, and military driven. And each of them pushes Beijing in a different direction.
China's first identity is the global strategic China. This China seeks recognition as natural leader of Asia and a near-peer challenger to the United States. It wants to dominate Indo-Pacific sea lanes, secure maritime choke points, and expand its naval footprint right up to the Indian Ocean. This ambition drives China's aircraft carrier program, the militarization of South China Sea, and its increasingly assertive position on Taiwan. Strategic China thinks in terms of power projection and long-term geopolitical reshaping. But alongside this is the nationalist China, a China that thrives on public emotion. Nationalism is glue that holds the Communist Party's legitimacy. This China cannot afford to look weak. It escalates disputes, pushes maximalist claims, and uses territorial assertiveness to excite domestic audiences. From the South China Sea to the line of actual control, many crises begin not because of strategy but because of nationalist China demands a posture of dominance. Yet there is another China, the economic China, the one that wants markets, supply chains, resources, and connectivity. This China depends on global stability. It wants to dominate global manufacturing, secure energy routes, and build economic corridors under the Belt and Road Initiative. For this China, conflict is not good business. It prefers predictable partnerships, access to technology, and uninterrupted trade flows.
On one hand, China wants stability because its economy is tied to global integration. But on the other, its domestic politics demand confrontation. That tension sits at the core of Beijing's behavior.
Underneath the confident exterior exists an insecure China, a China fearful of its own people. This China is defined by censorship, propaganda, and mass surveillance. It sees democracy in Taiwan, protests in Hong Kong, and dissent in Xinjiang as existential threats. To maintain internal control, it often creates an external threat narrative, ensuring the Communist Party represents itself as the only defender of Chinese sovereignty. This insecurity frequently slips into its foreign policy actions. And finally, there is PLA's China, a military institution with its own ambitions. The PLA seeks bigger budgets, sophisticated platforms, and a central role in shaping national strategy. Its assertiveness along the line of actual control reflects its desire to demonstrate capability. Sometimes, PLA behavior contradicts China's diplomatic messaging or even economic interests.
So what does China want? As I said, there is no single answer because there is no single China. Strategic China wants power. Nationalist China wants pride. Economic China wants stability. Insecure China wants control. And PLA China wants dominance. For India and the world, the challenge is to read which China is acting on any given day and to respond with clarity, caution, and strategic forethought. Asim Munir is now Chief of Defence Force. What does it mean for whole of this region? Well, let's understand that. Asim Munir is taking over as Pakistan's Chief of Defence Forces, which marks the most significant restructuring in Pakistan's military hierarchy since the creation of Joint Staff Headquarters. This move elevates his authority over all three services and centralizes Pakistan's strategic decision-making under one military figure more than ever before. So what does this elevation really signal? It signals two things. First, the continuation of Pakistan's long-standing tradition where real power remains with the military and not with the civilian government. By creating a CDF with expanded authority, Pakistan is acknowledging what has already been true on the ground. Strategic foreign and security policy flows from Rawalpindi. Second, it tightens Asim Munir's control over the army, navy and the air force at a moment when Pakistan faces political instability, economic crisis and internal militancy. This gives him an even stronger hand to shape national policy. So how does this affect India? For India, three implications stand out. Firstly, centralized decision making in Pakistan. A single point military authority could mean faster but not necessarily wiser responses during crisis. The chances of calibrated signaling or restraint may diminish, especially during border flare-ups. And secondly, sharp focus on Kashmir and hybrid operations. Munir's intelligence background in the ISI and military intelligence suggests a renewed emphasis on hybrid warfare, information ops and cross-border terror networks, rather than conventional escalation. And thirdly, a more aggressive international posturing. Expect Pakistan to present the CDF elevation as military modernization to West and China seeking more support and legitimacy. This may translate into slightly more assertive Pakistani position on regional issues. What about implications on the broader region? Afghanistan, well, Munir will push for deeper control over Taliban's behavior, especially on TTP sanctuaries. Expect more covert action and pressure along the Durand line. On China, Beijing gains a single decisive military interlocutor. This could accelerate CPEC Phase 2, defense procurements and joint counter-India initiatives. On Bangladesh, it may feel indirect but meaningful consequences. With Pakistan's military now more unified and projecting a stronger regional identity, Islamabad may re-engage Dhaka diplomatically, especially as Bangladesh navigates its internal political balance and its external ties with India and China. For India, this means carefully watching how Pakistan leverages ideological, political and digital influence inside Bangladesh, particularly during periods of political churn. So what is the bottom line? Well, Asim Munir's elevation consolidates unprecedented military power in Pakistan at a time of internal fragility. For India and the region, this means more centralized, more assertive and potentially more unpredictable Pakistan. That is all for this week on Defense Dynamics. Do share your comments on social media with #DDWithDanveer. See you next week with new defense and geopolitical developments and their analysis. Until then, goodbye and take care.